Hello, and welcome to the final session of the 2022 Fairfax County Housing Symposium. This hour's theme, Beyond Housing, Expanding Opportunities Through Innovation, will focus on modernizing existing affordable housing properties, innovations in green development, and the intentional creation of communities of opportunity. Once again, we welcome questions and comments from the audience through the use of the Q&A icon on your screen. We look forward to addressing as many questions as possible following the presentations. Very pleased to introduce the moderator for this session, Barbara Byron, the Director of the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. The department provides proposals, advice, and assistance on land use, development review, and zoning issues to those who make decisions on such issues in Fairfax County. Ms. Byron has also served as Director for the Office of Community Revitalization and has held a primary role in the county's public-private partnerships, including the formulation of community development authorities and tax increment financing initiatives. In addition, she's a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Welcome, Barbara. We're so happy you could be with us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite subjects. Well, actually, two of them. One is housing and the other is innovation. So Wikipedia defines innovation as the practical implementation of ideas that result in the introduction of new goods or services or the improvement in the offering of goods or services. So we're all fortunate enough to live in an amazing time when we've benefited from tremendous advances in innovation, from the iPhone to medicine, which we've all been associated with in the last couple of years, to Elon Musk sending citizens into space. While today's event has highlighted the importance of affordable housing for individuals, communities, and the region as a whole, and talks about how housing has played a critical role in advancing not only economic mobility, but also the creation of wealth, one of the themes that we've had also presented today is the fact that we can't continue to do things as we've been doing them and still meet our goals. Fortunately, a lot of innovative activities have been focused on meeting our housing shortages and meeting the needs of people who need to live in affordable housing. These include innovations related to housing policies, design, land use, building technologies, and energy efficiencies. We're fortunate today to have four people who will speak to you about an array of innovative practices that they're each involved in, from large scale to much smaller scale. And I'm sure you will find them as fascinating as I have. Kicking it off, we will start with Supervisor James Walkinshaw. James is a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. He represents the Braddock District and was elected to the board in 2019. He's the chairman of the board's legislative committee, and you can imagine what that entails. He's also vice chairman of both our Older Adults Committee and our Public Safety Committee, and is the chair of Fairfax County's Council to End Domestic Violence. Prior to being elected to the board, he spent more than a decade serving as chief of staff to Congressman Jerry Connolly. Supervisor Walkinshaw's remarks will focus on the innovative use of land for affordable housing that's occurring here in Fairfax County. James?
Thank you, Barbara. It's so wonderful to be back with George Mason University for this event. I look forward to seeing you all hopefully in person next year. I feel like we keep saying that year after year after year, but I think next year will be the year. But this is such an important opportunity for our community here in Fairfax County to come together and talk about one of the most important issues and challenges that we face moving forward. And you know, when we think about affordable housing, it's easy to get wrapped up in the numbers and the data and the programs and the plans. But today is such an important opportunity, in addition to doing that, to also take a step back and ask ourselves, why are we devoting all of this time and attention to this issue of affordable housing? And the reasons are, we know that affordable housing, access to affordable housing, leads to better outcomes for families and children. And, you know, as someone with a toddler at home, a young family, I think a lot about what it takes to build a strong and healthy and stable family. And it's a lot of work. But one of the things that is absolutely critical is having safe and affordable housing. And for families in our community, so many who don't have that, that work is even more difficult. We know that affordable housing leads to better economic prospects and upward mobility for employers in the business community, having workers who can live close to jobs and job centers. Those workers are going to be more productive, more innovative. We know for people in our community with disabilities and older adults in our community, being able to live here is incredibly valuable for them and for all of us. So it's such an important issue. And I know you heard from Chairman McKay earlier, and I'm sure he described how we're at a real crossroads here in Fairfax County, and we have an opportunity to really tackle this issue head on and make some real progress. And I think we're actually doing that in Fairfax County. I think we're bucking some of the trends that we see nationally because of the innovative approach that we're taking. And we know that right here in our community right now, 1 in 5 renters are paying more than 50% of their income for housing. So they're extremely housing burdened, 50% of their income. An even larger number are paying more than 30%. We know that we need at least 18,000 units that are affordable to households earning less than 80% of AMI over the next 15 years. Our board established a goal to create 5,000 new units by 2034. And because of some of the innovative projects I'm going to lay out here in the next couple of minutes, next week, we're going to be coming back and increasing that goal because we're on track to surpass it. And we know that we need to do even more. And we have to continue to innovate. And one of the ways that we're innovating is by, I like to say that we're practicing what we preach. And, you know, one of the challenges that we face in government and local government, especially, is the not in my backyard phenomena. Barbara knows that very well. And the approach we've taken to affordable housing in Fairfax County is to say, yes, we want affordable housing in our backyard. We, the Fairfax County government, we, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, want affordable housing in our backyard and in our front yard. And that's why we've prioritized identifying county-owned land across the county, co-location opportunities with existing or planned county facilities, and public-private partnerships so we can create even more opportunities. And that list, we had a presentation to the board just this week with the list of all of the projects that meet those criteria that are underway or in the pipeline. And it's a really long list. And I'm proud that a number of those projects on that list are in the Braddock district, but they're all across the county. And it kind of started, this approach really started, I know Congressman Connolly had been scheduled to be here earlier and couldn't make it, but he was instrumental in a project called the Residences at Government Center, where long before I was on the board, we took a piece of county-owned land and partnered with a developer and turned it into what's now an award-winning community of affordable units. And we've taken that model and spread it across the county. The Oakwood project, the project in Franconia, one that I'm particularly excited about, One University right across the street. If we were physically at George Mason University today, I'd say right across the street from us now at One University, where we're taking what had been 46 affordable townhomes and turning it into 240 affordable units, some for seniors and some for families. Really an incredible project. And I had the opportunity to spend some time along with other local government leaders from across the region with Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge a couple of weeks ago. And I was so excited to be able to tell her that that project at One University was, I believe, the first, if not one of the first uses of HUD's rental assistance demonstration program in the country, which is a federally funded program to renovate and improve public housing across the country. And we were able to take that not just to renovate and improve 46 units, but to turn 46 units into hundreds of additional units that our community will benefit from. Another project that's in our pipeline, and we're going to be announcing some additional progress on very soon, is what we've so far termed residences at Government Center 2. And when I talk about putting affordable housing in our backyard and in our front yard, this project is quite literally in the front yard, happens to be right now the front parking lot of the main Fairfax County Government Center. And for those of you who have visited the Fairfax County Government Center and seen the parking lot there, you know that there is more surface parking in front of that building than God intended any single facility ever to have, other than the Celebrate Fairfax Festival, which another event we look forward to getting back to. It's not a parking lot that's ever full, and we're taking a corner of that parking lot and turning it into as many as 275 affordable units. We also got some good news recently. Thanks to Congressman Connolly and Senator Kane and our congressional delegation, we actually were able to secure $1.5 million in funding in the most recent omnibus funding bill that the president has signed to invest into childcare, into the ground floor of that facility. So we're going to be bringing together two of our community's biggest and most urgent needs, affordable housing and affordable childcare, in one facility right in our front yard. We're moving forward on preservation and expansion of existing county affordable housing facilities with New Lake Ann House, where we're preserving by replacement 240 senior apartments. At Little River Glen, also in the Braddock District, we're renovating 120 existing apartments and adding 60 additional apartments for seniors. So a lot of really exciting things happening. And our philosophy is affordable housing throughout Fairfax County, not just in a few parts of the county where maybe in the past it would have been located, but affordable housing in every part of Fairfax County. And that's why we last year updated our accessory living unit policy to create an additional affordable option for people who want to have their older parents or their younger adult children perhaps living in an apartment, a small accessory apartment attached to their home or inside their home. We're expanding missing middle housing opportunities throughout the county. So we have a full spectrum of affordable housing, including 3-bedroom units that we know families desperately need. So we're going to continue pushing. We're going to continue innovating, because this challenge is so significant that we have to be creative each and every day. And I'm so excited to be here with you all today to learn from you and to hear from you and continue our progress. So I'll wrap up there. Barbara, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will say, since my window of my office looks out on that sea of parking lots, I am very anxious to see the new affordable housing building that will go up there. So next on our list of speakers is Tim McDonald. Tim is a licensed architect, and he and his brother founded Union Flats in 1997. It's an organization that focuses on high performance building technologies and alternative construction techniques. For their efforts, they have won numerous awards, both nationally and internationally. Mr. McDonald will focus his remarks today on the innovative developments and policy advancements being made by Union Flats, and maybe he'll tell us how it got the name, and the importance of not only building smarter, but also meeting energy conservation goals. Tim?
Thanks, Barbara. Let me just get my screen up here. Yeah, thanks for that intro. I love this focus on affordable housing. What I'd like to do is kind of connect it to one of the other crises that we have in this country, in this world, and that's the climate crisis. So hopefully you'll get the impression that we don't have to have one or the other, we can have both. As Barbara mentioned, I'm an architect, a developer, and a builder. We also have a green roof and solar company, and we also do a lot of work for clients. And really the focus of our work, I must say, is based on this, the fact that almost half of all greenhouse gas emissions in this country come from buildings. And if you connect that to the fact that cities, where most of the human population will live by 2050, 3/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions come from cities. That's buildings, transportation, and industry. So, as a responsible architect, I can't imagine anything more important other than gravity, which is why I call this the new gravity. Just as I wouldn't avoid gravity, I can't avoid the climate crisis. And we've got less than 20 years to do that. We've got 340 gigatons of CO2 left to emit into this atmosphere if we want to keep the globe from warming more than 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. That's a really tall task. For me, that means carbon neutral net zero energy buildings for affordable housing and frankly, market rate housing needs to be standard by 2040. What that means is that buildings need to generate what they require, i.e. self-sufficiency on their own site. So we all know that heating and cooling buildings is responsible for more than half of the issue. So what's the best heating and cooling system out there? I think it's a coat. I think it's a really well insulated, it's the least expensive. It's a really well insulated and tight coat. And it is the essence of the passive house standard, which calls itself a fabric first. And when it says fabric, it means the envelope of the building, a fabric first approach to building. If you focus on the envelope of the building, you can reduce your energy consumption by up to 80%. 75 to 80% is common. And in the process, have the best indoor air quality possible on the market. I'm going to show you a few projects that do this, and then that we've built and developed, but I'm also going to show you how those projects have created this initiative, this policy initiative around affordable housing. This is a 26-unit townhome development built for $150 a square foot. Now, the critical part of my presentation is about how we can do this cost effectively. How did we build? This was everyday code construction, but these are passive house buildings. How we do that is by innovating on all levels. One of which is we have to stop building buildings the way we've been doing them for the past 100 years, one stick at a time, on-site construction only. We've got to prefabricate the way that we build. The first 3 of these houses were built this way. We've also got to make them super airtight, really well insulated. Super airtight means that you blow the building up, you test it, you blow it up like a balloon under a certain pressure, and only half the volume can leak out in an hour. A typical building, 7 times the volume of that building leaks out in an hour. It's more important than insulation to make it airtight. Here are those first 3 buildings built. One of the other innovations is that you've got to really learn to integrate lots of different systems. So a roof in an urban environment has a lot of weight. It needs to do a lot of work. It needs to manage stormwater. It needs to be green open space, and it needs to generate the power that the building requires. Another project, 25-unit project around the corner from this in Philadelphia, has a different approach to the solar generation, energy generation. But this is also a passive house building. And in this case, we're not modularizing it, but we're panelizing it. So this high performance envelope comes packaged with windows and doors already installed on site. We were able to build this building in half the time because of it. We haven't put gas in a building in 15 years. It saves us money, it saves us time. And why would you do it when you can do everything in an apartment building with electric only? The other thing we're doing is, why would you have individual meters when each apartment is only going to use about $20 a month? Let's save that money. Let's save that space in the building. And we give people a $50 a month flat rate, even though their utility bills are somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 a month. They're happy, we're happy. This is how the building looks in Philadelphia. And we've also got to incentivize and educate the public. So in this case, the LED lights that are attached to the building are actually tied to the apartment energy consumption, but nobody knows which panel belongs to which apartment. So when you come home, you wonder whether the green, which essentially means this person's living within their energy budget, versus the yellow or orange, which means they're not, maybe creates a dialogue among the tenants. And at $169 a square foot, this was everyday code construction at the time. A different way of integrating solar into the building is to elevate it another couple of feet, in this case 10 feet. And that way we have this beautiful green roof that can be used as an amenity space as well. Another way to deal with that is maybe you begin to integrate solar into the facade of the building. This is a 28 unit project just north of this last project. And at $180 a square foot all in, this was again built at the same cost per square foot as typical code built construction. And the integration of solar here is a little bit more radical in that these translucent glass panels are floating about 24 inches away from the facade. And they have a triple function. One is they generate all the power the building needs, but the other really important one is that they keep the summer sun out in the summertime. They're a solar shading device while letting that free heat in the wintertime, but they're also a visual privacy device so that you don't have to have blinds in your apartments. I think every roof in every city needs to begin to look something like this. And in this case, this is a net positive energy building. And we were able to kind of shift gears here around the very notion of utilities being a cost rather than, in this case, a revenue stream. So we have, even with the $40 a month fixed utility rate that we charge people, we're still making an additional $16,000 a month. So wouldn't it be interesting if we could change the concept of utilities in that way? Mechanical systems are starting to become much more integrated. In this case, this is a new product that is both a ventilation machine as well as heating, cooling, and dehumidification all in one unit. Much more inexpensive, easy to run ductwork, and so forth. Here's how it works within these very small 450 square foot, one bedroom apartments, merged nicely into the kitchen cabinetry and merged nicely into the context. The last project I want to show you is this first passive house project we did. It's an affordable housing project. It was a modular project, the first attempt at a modular project. And with a 5 kW array of PV on these roofs, it was designed to meet all the energy consumption needs of the building. And at $129 a square foot, and our first affordable housing project, we went to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency and said, listen, if we can do this, anybody can do this. Why don't you make all affordable housing capable of getting to net zero by 2030? They said yes. And they said, I didn't even know about the QAP or the low income housing tax credit program at the time. Turns out it's a very competitive process, as you all know. And the thought was, what if we just put an extra optional 10 points in here? This competitive nature of the QAP, that might get some people interested. Well, turns out it did. 38% of the projects that came in that year came in as passive house projects. 7 50, 60 unit projects got funded to be built to the passive house standard. Here are the costs of all of those projects. And we compared the passive house to the code built projects. The passive house projects that came in 75% more energy efficient cost 2.5% more to build. PHFA said they can do that within their contingencies. Let's continue this. They all got built on budget, on time. The next year, 10 projects were funded and the exact same thing, but guess what happened? It switched. The passive house projects came in on average 2% less than the code built projects. Now, maybe that was a fluke. Here they all are. They're all built. The next year, 8 projects were funded. The exact same thing happened. 2% less on average than the code built projects using 75% more energy. And so we said, that was pretty easy. Why don't we just talk to a bunch of housing finance agencies to see if they can do the same thing? And to date, these are the states that have passive house at one level or another built into their QAP. Virginia is a recent addition to this, I'm very excited about, and people are building these projects all over these states. And even the ones that don't have it in their QAP, they're building them anyway. Here they are in states that still don't have it, them incentivized in their QAP. Why? Because it makes sense. I'll leave you at this. We have a conference that, if you could just Google New Gravity Conference, that deals with all of these issues specific to affordable housing and high performance buildings. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tim. That was fascinating, and the buildings are very beautiful. So I congratulate you on that. Next on our speakers list is Angela Amos. Angela is Director of Market Development and Regulatory Innovation at Uplight, where she leads regulatory and policy engagement for Uplight's cutting-edge consumer-focused technology. Her remarks will focus on opportunities for low-income housing and communities to participate in energy efforts and Uplight's experience connecting energy providers with low-income communities. Thank you, Angela. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I sent my slides in advance. Will I be running them myself, or? Oh, you got
I have no clue. Here they are. They're up. They're up.
Love it. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the conversation today. So thank you. Next slide, please. So today, as we heard, I'll be talking about ways to empower customers through tech innovation with a particular focus on low and moderate income customers. Next slide. A little bit about my company. I work for Uplight, and we are the leading provider of customer-focused software solutions dedicated to helping our partners, customers, and users navigate the energy transition. Next slide. We are a B Corp, which means that it is part of our mission to think about things like decarbonization and to create a more sustainable future using business as a force for good. Next slide. So as Tim and Supervisor Walkinshaw and others have said, climate change and matters of the energy transition are top of mind for everyone. And energy providers are on the path to decarbonization and grid resilience more generally in light of the extreme weather we've been experiencing, but there's still some significant challenges. Next slide. At the same time, energy customers might want to participate in the energy transition, but they don't know how. And as we've all been observing, the challenge is greater than ever, because regardless of one's views about the cause of climate change or the cause of things, the fact is that we are every day observing the effects of extreme temperatures, both very hot and very cold, and more hurricanes and all sorts of things. So something needs to be done, and we ourselves as end use customers might want to participate in solving the problem. So last year, Uplight partnered with the Sea Change Institute to do a survey of over 1,000 residential customers across the US. Next slide, please. And we surveyed all types of customers, but as relevant here, I'm going to share with you all some of our findings for low and moderate income households. What we saw was that compared to high income customers, LMI customers were much more likely to struggle to pay their electric bills. They had other things that they were worried about. Supervisor Walkinshaw talked about the housing burden that many customers face, and we definitely saw that in the results of our survey. And we saw similarly, there was a very high energy burden for some customers. Next slide. Specifically, as we dive into the findings, we saw that older adults, for example, had a higher energy burdens, and in part because maybe they're on a fixed income. And we also saw nuances regarding homeownership, whether people were renters versus owners, and of course, the financial challenges and other challenges related to the pandemic were top of mind for those who responded to the survey. Next slide, please. So that all being said, we are aware that energy providers, utilities and others, have to figure out a way to connect all of these different customer needs to the programs that are best and the rate structures and all of that are best for those customers. And so what I outline here are, this virtuous cycle of making sure that customers know what's available to them, getting people on the right programs for them and their budget, and then using engagement to keep people on the right track. Next slide. So I wanted to spend, most of my time today talking about a specific software solution that my company is really excited about, our partner utilities are really excited about, called Plus. I will note that Plus is just what we call it. When a customer is actually engaging with the software, it's going to be branded under the utilities brand. So that way, it's like if your utility is making this available, all you will see is just the utility's name, and you'll be interacting with your utility the way you normally would, only the experience will be a lot better. Next slide. In tech speak, since I do work for a tech company, it's a bundle of software development kits or SDKs and APIs. But all that really means is that for each segment, each touch point that the utility has, we're finding easy ways to connect each of those touch points technical or software wise with what the customer needs and wants to see. And so, as I said, we try to engage with customers on every channel that they're already used to using and then make it better. So for those utilities that offer an app on their phone, on someone's phone, or on the website, or on a tablet or whatever, this software is completely versatile to, again, engage the customer where they are. I probably said this already, but if I didn't, we're really excited about this technology. It's literally award-winning because it's a really nice way to connect customers to the programs that are best for them. Next slide. How it normally works is that the utility might offer something, and each offering is its own little silo. And it's really hard to figure out what is even out there. So I know for myself, I am not in the habit of calling Dominion every day to find out if there's maybe a better rate available to me. Usually most customers, you will set up your utility service when you move in and you kind of don't think about it anymore. And you have your bill each month and maybe you're angry about the value that's being charged or something like that, but you're not proactively reaching out to your utility to say, hey, has anything changed since I last signed up? Is there a better rate available to me? And oftentimes, even when the utility does offer something like a discount on a light bulb or water heater or a better rate plan or something like that, the customer might not even know that that's out there. And in particular, for lower income customers, the utility might have a program, home energy assistance programs or other things that actually are designed to help that customer pay less money or live a better life. But if the customer doesn't even know it's out there and there's not a good way to connect the customer to that program, then everyone is missing out. So next slide. What this software does is puts all of those programs in the same place for the customer to be able to see it. And it even offers to them proactively a personalized set of solutions to make sure, again, that the customer is getting the very best value and is proactively invited to take advantage of all the offers that are available. Next slide, please. So let's see how this works in action. I've highlighted 3 utility examples of where Plus has been in action, and is, and I'm sharing with you some of the preliminary results that we're particularly proud of. One thing I will note is that one of the features of Plus that is really, really popular is a subscription bill. Tim alluded to this, I think, in his presentation, of this idea where the customer can have a flat rate every single month. It introduces a lot of bill certainty. And a lot of customers really like that because it takes away the concern that might come from changing or rising, in our current environment, energy costs. At the same time, from a grid perspective, it's really important to a lot of regulators and to many that you're not sending the wrong incentives. Because if the price is the same every month, then maybe you don't know You don't have price as a way to signal if you should adjust your usage. But the way our software works is that in addition to offering that fixed bill, we also have the option to optimize a customer's smart thermostat or other smart devices. So the customer can basically stay super comfortable in their home while also having the bill certainty that comes from the subscription bill. And so what you see in the grid here are some of the ways that we've implemented that and some of the results. I'll note that one of the other cool things is that for those utilities that offer green energy programs, again, this software surfaces that option for the customer, and customers can proactively enroll in the kind of green energy program that's important to them. And so in the AES example, we saw that there was a 107% increase in green energy enrollment once customers were exposed to this deal. Again, because once they know it's there, they can actually sign up for it. And I will also highlight that for Duke, for example, Duke has recently commissioned a study to really dive into the customer experience and focus on how satisfied customers are with this particular offering. And I just checked in with a partner at Duke this morning to see what the latest results are from that study. And he told me that LMI customers in particular have been really, really excited about the opportunity to have this subscription bill because of the bill certainty that it offers. And just taking away the anxiety of a fluctuating energy bill has been such a relief to these customers because, you know, with everything else going on in the world and all of the prices that are rising everywhere else, at least their energy bill is something that they know will be certain, it's not going to change. And it, again, because of the way that we're also managing the energy in their homes, they don't have to worry about, you know, making the world worse or something like that because of wasteful energy usage. So the big picture here is that with technology, everyday customers can be really engaged with their energy usage and also managing their bill in a way that just hasn't been possible in the past. And certainly the technology didn't even exist 20 years ago to do this. So we're really, really excited about giving customers at all income levels, but in particular, the lower income levels, the opportunity to take control of their bill, understand what's going on in their house, and also obviously participate in the energy transition. Next slide, which is also my final slide. The last thing I would say is, since many of you listening or participating in this conversation are developers, I will highlight, you know, the structure of the grid is changing. And so there are many other things to think about for the future, and even now, but certainly for the future, is other ways to help customers stay engaged in addition to just the energy in their homes. And as we're building out the infrastructure for a future grid that uses less carbon, please keep in mind that more and more vehicles will be electric, more and more devices in buildings, residential and otherwise, will be electric. So please continue to give customers options as you're building, because those, whatever you're deciding now, might be in place for many years to come. Thanks for your time. Looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
I apologize, my video is not on. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you so much. In our last, I'm stuck here. Our last, sorry, the screen is getting stuck on me. Our last speaker is Janet Green. She's the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Peninsula and Greater Williamsburg. So we all know about the tremendous work that Habitat has done in this particular jurisdiction of it. They've built, renovated, and repaired more than 500 homes since it was founded in 1985. Ms. Green will talk to us about her organization's partnership to manufacture the first 3D printed home in Virginia, which I find very fascinating. And she's going to start with a video, which I presume shows how the house is constructed. And after that, we'll have some remarks. So thank you and welcome.
Great. Why don't we just go right to the video then? Thank you. I love to show that video because not only does it show the 3D printing, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it really focuses on the family. As Barbara said, I work for Habitat for Humanity, whose mission is to build homes, community, and hope. And so many times people think they know Habitat, but they think we give homes away to poor homeless people, and we don't. Habitat, where I am in Greater Williamsburg, Habitat's all over the Commonwealth of Virginia. There are 1,400 in the United States, and we're in almost 80 different countries worldwide, are all doing the same thing. We're working in partnership with families to create more affordable homeownership opportunity for families with low to moderate income. We like to say it's a hand up, not a hand out. So I want to talk specifically, this is the first 3D printed Habitat home in the nation. We are so proud of that, and we have gotten incredible media attention, both again, locally, regionally, state, and worldwide. And I'm thrilled with the media attention because again, we are focused on families and providing more affordable homeownership opportunities. I want to talk specifically about the 3D since it is brand new technology, and we've already learned an awful lot from just what we did, finishing the house right a couple days before Christmas, even through today, just 90 days later. It took us about 28 hours if we were to print consecutively the exterior walls for this 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. Preliminary estimates, and they proved out with our home, is that printing with 3D is saving about 15% square foot savings on this 1,200 square foot home. We printed about 156 layers, a little bit less than an inch each. And you can see as it was going around that it left the spaces for the windows and the doors. The most exciting part about 3D, I think, is not only is it cheaper, faster, and saves time, but concrete confers additional long-term savings because it better retains temperature, saving on the heating and cooling costs for our homeowners. Things I didn't know is that concrete is also more resistant to tornado and hurricane damage, and concrete doesn't burn and you don't have the problems with termites or bugs. All of our Habitat homes are what are called Earthcraft certified. Earthcraft is a voluntary green building program that serves as a healthy blueprint for our families. And while it costs our Habitat a little bit more to build Earthcraft homes, the savings for our homeowners who are signing a 30-year no interest monthly mortgage helps to reduce their utility bills and certainly minimizes environmental impacts. On this 3D printed home, Virginia Tech Center for Housing and Research, who we partnered with, along with Alquist, a 3D printing construction company, has installed something called Building Data Light in the home. And it's about the size of a credit card, and there are 6 of them in the home right now, and they're monitoring everything in the home from humidity, temperature, air quality, gases, and then of course it's going to integrate with her security and alarm systems for motion detection, etc. That information today is being sent back every day to Virginia Tech so they can monitor this home, and we can share this data with people all across the country, because being the first 3D printed Habitat home, we're all trying to learn as much as we can. And when the weather gets warmer, we're planning on installing solar panels on this house for even more savings. So those are the just sort of general overview of the 3D printing, but we know that many other groups, for-profit and nonprofit developers, are finding out and learning a lot more. And the one thing I will say is that to do one 3D house is not cost effective at this time, but the technology is rapidly changing. Alquist has already made major improvements, like I said, just in the last 90 days. And we're learning as much as we can to be able to do more 3D printed homes so that we can, again, build more affordable homes for these families with low to moderate incomes. Thank you very much.
That was fascinating, and thank you for sharing the video. It was so great to see it in production. So I would encourage people in the audience, if you would like to ask questions, please send them into the chat. We do have a couple that have come in. The first two, I guess, are for Supervisor Walkinshaw. I'll read them both to you, slightly different, but one is, how can we recreate and replicate one university in Annandale or other places in the county, Annandale being close to your heart? And also, as the board's legislative chair, are there things that you think we should be lobbying the state to help us with in the provision of affordable housing?
Yeah, great questions. And, with respect to Annandale and the Northern Virginia Community College, one thing I should point out, I was with Dr. Kress, who's the president of the Northern Virginia Community College, earlier this week. And one of the things that they've really stepped up and accelerated during the pandemic is their supports to students who are facing financial insecurity, students who are facing housing insecurity. So they have a number of grant programs that they've established, sometimes using federal funds to help students in those categories. And I do know that I'm fortunate to represent what I think are the two greatest educational institutions in the country, George Mason University and Northern Virginia Community College Annandale campus. And they are looking at making some long-term changes to the physical campus. So there may be an opportunity there to look at housing. I don't know exactly where they are in their planning, but that's certainly a good conversation to have. And I'm very glad to hear the conversation about the legislative committee, because it ties into so much of what especially Tim and Angela talked about in their presentations. And I just want to focus on one thing that Tim talked about in terms of the fabric of buildings and making buildings more energy efficient. And one of the, Virginia is unique. Some folks maybe understand this, but in our region, because we're a Dillon rule state, we don't control our building codes the way that Maryland or DC or other local governments might across the country. So we're reliant in many cases on the state government to improve building codes. And one of our top priorities that we have been advocating for is for the Commonwealth of Virginia to adopt a modern building code, to adopt the IEEC building code, which would require much more energy efficient buildings. And it's so important because, what goes into making an energy efficient building is unless they're modularly built, which I think would be great, but you really have to, it's much more cost efficient to do it on the front end than it is to go back and try to retrofit it later. If you build a new home in Maryland, before you can get an occupancy permit, there's a blower door test, and Tim had the picture of a blower door test. There's a blower door test conducted on every new home to ensure that when it was built, the contractors air sealed it appropriately, that when they were in the attic, they caulked and spray foamed the right spots. And if they didn't, it's going to show up in that blower door test. And right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, I can tell you, brand new homes, some of them for $1.5 million, are being built, and they're not being properly air sealed because it's not tested. And that's just critical moving forward. We have to address that in Virginia, because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the owners of those homes are going to have to go back in and redo it. And it's going to be much more expensive to do it then than it is now. So that's absolutely something that we're fighting for and will continue to fight for.
So Angela,
Amen.
we are, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tim, I'm sorry.
Just an amen.
Thanks.
We are trying. We are on an uphill battle, but hopefully we'll win this one. We'll climb this hill. So we have to ask Angela, have you approached Dominion Energy? Your software seems phenomenal for all of us, regardless of income, as you said. And if so, have you gotten any response from Dominion?
We do partner with Dominion for other things. They are not one of the utilities that is yet, they're not one of our pilots for what I described today. But I think we all have an opportunity to cry out to our utilities and highlight for them how important it is to us to have the best tools available. So I don't want to be super salesy here, nor is it my place to say Dominion's not doing great. But I would say that Dominion has every opportunity to deploy these sorts of technologies to, make each of its customers' lives easier.
So for Tim in particular, I guess, but maybe Janet as well, the examples you showed us were reasonably small developments. Have you looked at ramping up to larger scale developments? That's the first part of the question. And the second is, do you have challenges with finding people who will build the offsite panels and supply them to you?
Maybe I'll start, Janet, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
No, we've designed, in fact, we're in the middle of a project in Louisville, Kentucky, which is it was originally a 600 unit community with a lot of other things going on. The program's changing right now, but we're in the middle of a 16-story tower design in Philadelphia as well, all designed to the Passive House standard. Net zero energy is the focus. So in fact, the amazing thing about building high performance buildings is that the larger they get, the easier they are to do. It's a kind of surface to volume issue. Think of it this way: a tiny little house needs big, thick walls because the surface area compared to the tiny volume, that surface area, there's a lot of heat loss there. But if you get a 200 unit apartment building, what physically happens is the thickness of the insulation goes down. And so it's much, much easier to make high performance buildings. Jonathan Rose, who is one of the best affordable housing developers in the country, is under construction right now with a 650 unit apartment building of all affordable housing, Passive House standard in New York City. As far as panelization is concerned, it's an industry that is specifically focused on high performance envelopes. Panelizers are everywhere. Lots of buildings use panelizers, but panelizers that build the air barrier, build the rigid insulation, build the weather resistant barrier, build the triple pane windows and doors into the panel, they're few and far between. There's one in Baltimore, I probably shouldn't talk about company names, that is one of the most exciting ones because they panelize the entire building, not just the exterior walls, but the floors and the roofs. And they also include integrated in the factory mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So I think that's the direction that we're going as a society. And the industry needs to kind of get to that place that we need to go.
And for Janet, do you see the challenges or opportunities for doing the 3D houses on a larger scale?
I see both, and mostly a lot of people were concerned that we were taking jobs away from the building trades, and that's not the case. In fact, the machine that we printed this house with is still located here in Williamsburg, Virginia. We're partnering with a local community college on starting a curriculum. So young people or young at heart, especially those who are so good at video games, et cetera, can learn this technology and get their hands on it. And so they're going to be doing hands-on because a lot of people are not going into the construction trades right now. Mm-hmm. For 3D printed, we will still need all the subcontractors, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. But for the actual building trades, just like all industries, we are struggling to find staff and even volunteers, which Habitat relies on so much. So we're hoping by teaching this new technology, especially to the young at heart, we will have more opportunities to be building even more 3D printed homes. The concrete that we used is not environmentally friendly, and we all knew that going in. And so Zach Mannheimer, the founder and CEO of Alquist 3D, is looking at using different kinds of sources, including like hempcrete, which is becoming very popular right now. So we are looking at each individual part of both affordable housing and 3D printing to see what innovations that we can make. And I'm excited to think, again, changes are happening literally every day and have happened in the last 90 days since we finished this house.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Let's see, I'm not seeing many questions from the audience, so we can keep on going or even ask each other questions. I guess I have a couple more to ask, and maybe, frankly, I said a few more. So Supervisor Walkinshaw talked about, and actually Supervisor Lusk on the last panel, talked about a number of the sites that the county owns where we're using those pieces of kind of excess property or repurposed property to put up affordable housing, either as an individual standalone project or in conjunction with other public facilities. But we will run out of that kind of land. Do you see opportunities for other ways in which we can incentivize development of the kinds of affordable housing that you're talking about, different from things we've heard on previous panels today, like, you know, expedite the development process or lower the fees? Are there other things that we could be doing and looking at which would help bring projects like yours into the county?
That was a question for the other folks, right there. I'm hoping they're going to tell me the answer.
I know, me too.
Well, I've got a couple, I've got two examples that are in line with the, you know, cheaper fees and expedited review process. On a couple of projects that we've done, sustainability has been an incentive, and in the sense that, for instance, the green roof that we put on one of our projects, we put green roofs on all of our projects, but one of the first ones that I showed you, we got a density bonus because of that. So zoning allowed us, I think, only 19 units. We were able to increase the density based on that green roof. Now that's about stormwater management, but why can't we do the same thing when it comes to high performance building, a net zero energy building? You meet net zero energy code, or you build a passive house, certified passive house building, you get a density bonus. I think that would totally change the pro forma for a developer, because I'm a developer. I understand I understand the importance of pro formas and how the cost and the revenue side you need to massage them all the time. So those are really simple and straightforward opportunities that I don't think you'll get a lot of people attempting it. But when the first couple do, and they realize how easy it is to do, I think that momentum will begin.
Have any of you had experience with repurposing buildings? So we are actually fortunate to have been in the forefront of repurposing some of our vacant office buildings into housing, primarily market rate, but all of our market rate does have an affordable component, which is a good thing. But these have not been truly, you know, all affordable buildings. So what would be the challenges of the energy efficiency and sustainability that you're talking about when you use a repurposed building? I mean, we all know you don't have to bring in, you know, the structure for the building, but are there other benefits to be accrued from that? Anybody?
I mean, I can speak to that, but I don't want to take over the conversation. Does somebody want to say something?
Go ahead, Tim, you kick us off on it.
So we are working currently, our company is working with the Rocky Mountain Institute. And the Rocky Mountain Institute has created a program called the Realize program. And you can Google it, you'll learn all about it. Essentially, it's based on a program in the Netherlands called Energy Sprong, which is based on the idea of one of the most difficult things about retrofitting buildings is the cost associated with relocating people and then bringing them back. And so they developed this exterior panelized strategy where they essentially put a a wrap on the a high performance wrap, high performance envelope on the outside of whether it's an apartment building or a duplex, the size doesn't matter. With high performance windows, super airtight, and mechanical systems also incorporated, if you can, into the facade. The Realize program is the same thing in the United States, and they've kicked it off in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. And we're currently working with them right now on a couple of projects. One is a 137 unit project, of 50, and we've done some modeling of it. And the EUI, or it's kind of like the miles per gallon of a building. We're going to reduce that by 75% with this exterior retrofit strategy. People get to stay in their apartments when we do the wrapping, and then we come in for one day and into each apartment, we swap out the old windows and tie the new windows and the panel back into the existing envelope. So
that's really fascinating. We have one example of an office building that did that in Tyson's, where they kept the tenants in place while they put on a new facade. But one of our major efforts, and I don't know that we talked a lot about it today, is the preservation of the naturally occurring and committed, but soon to be not committed, affordable housing. And if you can modernize the buildings in the way that you're talking about while keeping people in place without relocation, that's phenomenally exciting.
Yep.
And where we partner is helping to modernize the devices within the building and within the home. Because as we know, regulations change and rebates are hard to find, and things are very difficult for the end user and for developers to figure out what's available and how to actually put it to use. So we help surface these opportunities to save money and thereby encourage or provide an additional incentive for homeowners and others to replace their inefficient appliances with those that are more efficient to save them money and also to save energy.
Yeah, and I could just offer a couple of thoughts on each of those questions, maybe related. First in terms of density bonuses, and we have to operate with kind of a carrot approach more than a stick approach in Virginia due to the legal structure. But we absolutely do that, and Barbara could correct me, but we were one of the first jurisdictions, certainly the first in Virginia, to establish a LEED certified building program through our comprehensive plan. But I think one of the key things that we must do as government, especially large local governments like Fairfax County, is to be market drivers ourselves, because and I think Tim and Angela and Janet are all involved in the construction industry in some way, shape, or form. And, I've only had 2 jobs in my life. I was a plumber. My dad was a plumber, and I've been in politics. And the construction industry is probably even more resistant to change than politics is, perhaps. But there's a way of doing things. It's how we've always done it. And it's very hard to drive that change. But local governments and state governments and the federal government, through their own procurement processes, can be drivers of that change. And that's one of the things that we have focused on. So for Fairfax County buildings moving forward, we're updating our building policy, moving toward a net zero building policy. So new Fairfax County fire stations and police stations and office buildings will be net zero buildings moving forward. Even before we do that, one of the things that I have pushed for is even buildings that we're starting to design and build today will be electric ready, so that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we don't have to go back in and install new conduit to have an electric heat pump instead of a gas furnace or gas boiler. And my hope is those things will drive the market. Contractors who want to bid on our projects will have to develop those capabilities, and they'll become more available to the private sector. I could tell you right now, I moved into a new house recently with a gas furnace. And if I called 10 HVAC companies and said, I want to convert my gas furnace to an electric heat pump, at least 9 of them would tell me not to do it. It's too cold in Virginia. Electric heat pumps don't work when it gets that cold, which is absolutely false and not true, but it's how they're set up to work. They have relationships with companies that manufacture gas furnaces, and that's what they want to sell, and that's what they want to install. So one of the ways that we can drive that change is changing the way we, Fairfax County government, build our buildings.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to add something to that because I couldn't agree more. This idea of building the market and training people as you're building the market. You might wonder, how is it possible? All those developers and builders that I showed in that spreadsheet, how is it possible that they were able to build passive house level buildings at essentially the same cost as code built buildings? How? It's one simple thing, in my opinion. When people are forced to do it, they get creative. So they only have the budgets that they have. They chose to go to do passive house because they got 10 points in the QAP, which means that they got funded. That's the first step. The second step is, how are you going to do it within the budgets that you have? You get creative. And so anybody that tells you that cost is the barrier between business as usual now and where we need to be in the next 18 years, it's just incorrect. It's incorrect today.
I think that's interesting, and it ties into one of the questions that we received from the audience. Can you talk, any of you or all of you, talk about the relationship between the cost of construction and what you want to achieve with the energy efficiency versus how much it will then, and you talked a little bit about that, Tim, and Jenna, from the other end, it was a little more expensive, affect the cost of the product. But if you were to receive assistance, like we are offering people for the provision of affordable housing, we are doing that. We have very successfully. We're entering into partnerships to do that. So if we enter into those partnerships with you, does that offset whatever construction issues you might have to create the better building?
I'll start on that one and say yes. But there also is a responsibility of everybody to think we're living in this shared world. And so I've been fortunate to be with Habitat for 20 years. And the idea of spending more on affordable housing is not our mission. But the idea of protecting the environment, which is why we do this Earthcraft Energy Star on everything we do, is so important. Looking back, we thought we were building beautiful homes 20 years ago, but they weren't as good as they are today. And so the more that we can invest in ourselves will help everybody, and we'll share this technology like we're doing. It's so important. And I think, Tim, you said it beautifully. If you make for-profit developers have to do that and nonprofit developers, they'll figure out a way.
So the other part of that, John, that I think is not only is it helping the environment, but it's helping the residents who move into the homes to get to Angela's area where their costs are going to be lower, they'll have more sustainable dwellings, and it's a better environment for them to be in. So we have a very technical little question for you, Angela. One of the participants would like to know how you call or write to a gas or electric or energy company to get a more energy efficient smart thermostat.
Yes, often a utility's website will have this information. The more forward-looking utilities are going to have a very robust marketplace, hopefully operated by Uplight. But the point is that the utility's website will often have the information there. You could also call the customer service number on the bill. Depending on where the person who's asking the question lives, there could be third-party providers that also make smart thermostats or other smart devices available. But I'd say a good place to start is the website for your current utility.
So I have one question which maybe can tie into closing thoughts from each of you. So we've talked about a lot of innovations here, which has been really thought-provoking and fascinating. But not only do you have closing thoughts, but are there other areas that we haven't talked about where you're seeing innovation in the provision of affordable housing? So why don't we start with Angela?
I can tell you what I'm most excited about. or among the things I'm most excited about. I think that the infrastructure bill that was, recently passed has a lot of funding for a lot of innovation. And that's everything from electric vehicles to energy efficiency and other things in homes and buildings. And so although it is unclear, it's too early to tell how all of that funding will make its way through to individual consumers and all of that. I do think it's pretty exciting that there is a large investment in the future and in what's possible. Related to that, certainly from the data side, there is a lot of innovation around using customer data or usage data, not even just customer data, just using data to make smarter decisions. And that's tied to increases in computing power and also increasing trust in algorithms to provide suggestions on the way forward. So those two avenues, the investment from federal government as well as the embrace of digital innovation, are things that are pretty exciting to me.
Thank you. Janet, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had the pandemic in Northern Virginia.
No.
We had it. No, okay, we had it down here. The pandemic, to me, in all seriousness, really highlighted home. And if you were fortunate enough to be working from home, that meant you had a job that you could do in your place where you live. And it really laid bare to me that so many habitat homeowners, so many people who depend on affordable housing, healthcare workers, frontline workers, restaurant workers, they couldn't work from home. And if they didn't have also a safe place or the electricity or the internet to work from home, that really caused a huge havoc. So when Angela said about the infrastructure bill, I really think that I have seen the focus on affordable housing more in the last 18 months than I have seen in the last 20 years, nationwide, worldwide. And I am so glad that we are having all of these conversations and all of these people are doing great work to try to create more affordable housing.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I think that we're dealing with, we had a pandemic and then that turned into the potential for, a global war that we're in the middle of right now. What did that do? Well, that just doubled our energy costs overnight, right? Overnight. So is it going to get better or worse? Is climate change going to make this better or worse? It's going to make it worse. So is there any reason, given the data that we've heard from everybody today, is there any reason other than inertia, right? Just not wanting to do differently than what we've been doing. Is there any reason to not make this transition as quickly as possible from a fossil-based economy to a renewable energy-based economy, to an equitable economy? And here's the beauty of all these crises, this equity crisis in our country, right? But that's been laid bare by the health crisis in our country. And it's also been laid bare by the climate crisis in our country. And yet the housing crisis could solve all of it. Because if you take housing on as the driver to train the building industry, the affordable housing world, to train the building industry, that addresses all those crises at once.
Thank you. And James, if you would like to close us out.
Sure. Well, what an amazing panel. Three real innovators here pushing the envelope on affordability, on climate. Just such an honor to be with you all. And I think an innovation that has kind of emerged, come together for me, just listening to the other panelists here, is the way that we have to account for energy and energy costs in affordable housing. And I started off by giving some of the numbers in terms of the percentage of households in Fairfax County that are spending 50% of their income and 30% of their income on housing. But those numbers are what they're spending on their rent. their mortgage. And we know that those aren't the only, rent and mortgage might be the biggest, but it's not the only factor when it comes to affordability. And I think we do spend time talking about and thinking about access to public transportation, because if the rent is affordable, but there isn't access to public transportation, so families have to purchase a car and drive 30 or 40 miles a day to get to work, the housing isn't affordable. And I think what our other panelists have brought to light here today is that if the building isn't efficient, if the home isn't efficient, if they're not monitoring their energy use and being able to make good decisions about it, the home isn't affordable. So I think we need to dig a little bit deeper into our data and look at not just what households are spending on rent, but also what they're spending on energy costs. And as we move forward to build new and more and preserve existing affordable housing across Fairfax County and across our region, ensure that energy and energy costs are always part of that conversation. Because if we can drive down energy costs, we can drive down overall costs, housing becomes more affordable for everyone. So that's a big takeaway for me. I thank the panelists for helping really crystallize that in my mind. And Barbara, it's something I think we can both take forward into our work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all again. And I think we turn it back to Ben.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Barbara. And thank you to our panel, Supervisor Walkinshaw, Angela Amos, Timothy McDonald, and Janet Green for taking the time to be with us. Just an amazing session, and we really appreciate your expertise and your innovation and for being with us. Also to our audience, we've been getting great questions all throughout the course of the day, and we really appreciate your contribution to this program. If we did not get to your question, please feel free to email it to us at rha@fairfaxcounty.gov. I'm now pleased to introduce our final speaker of the afternoon, Supervisor John Faust. Supervisor Faust was elected to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors in 2007 from the Drainesville District. He represents Mount Vernon, he represents McLean, Great Falls, Herndon, and portions of the Vienna and Falls Church areas. He serves as chairman of the board's Housing and Economic Initiatives Committees. He's also the vice chairman of the board's Budget and Health and Human Service Committees. And he also represents Fairfax County on several regional boards and commissions. We're very pleased to welcome Supervisor Faust for this afternoon's closing thoughts.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here with you, and it's been an awesome day. I know that through today's presentations and discussions, we've developed a deeper understanding of the housing challenges that we face here in Fairfax County and throughout the entire Washington metropolitan region. Those challenges are real and they are significant. But we also had a powerful demonstration today of the leadership, partnerships, innovation, and most importantly, the desire to achieve the affordable housing outcomes that we are pursuing. Our shared goal is to provide affordable housing to everyone who lives in Fairfax County, regardless of income or socioeconomic status. We all agree that everyone deserves the opportunity to live in affordable housing in this county, to be able to work in this county, to raise their children here, and to age in place. So during my tenure as chairman of the board's housing committee, I've learned some important lessons. As as we pursue our goal of providing affordable housing that is affordable to everyone in the community. The first one will not surprise anyone who has been involved in development of affordable housing projects, and that lesson is that those projects are about as complicated and as challenging as it gets. They're complicated at many levels, but in terms of financing, especially, we're required to make any new deal pencil out. It's difficult. So second lesson I've learned is that to overcome those complications, leadership at all levels of our community is necessary to make the progress we need. Leadership by our advocates, by the residents who will live in new communities, by the FCRHA, and by nonprofit and for-profit developers, as well as the Board of Supervisors. So 2 years ago, COVID started its ugly, awful spread throughout the world, and that changed everything. As we've heard from our remarkable panelists today, the pandemic has heightened what some of us may have known, but perhaps didn't want to fully confront, that even though Fairfax County is one of the wealthiest counties in the country, thousands and thousands of households are living on the edge of poverty. And many of those households must also deal with obstacles based on their source of income, their race, or the ways that they identify. So while these issues won't fix themselves and they won't be reversed overnight, I believe that as a community and as an elected body, we are confronting the inequities head on and setting aggressive goals to pursue for developing more affordable housing within the county. One thing we have learned from these annual housing symposiums is that housing is the key to a better life. Having housing that we can afford allows us to pay for our prescriptions, put food on our table for our families, and to ensure that our children have a stable and environment in which they can learn and achieve their fullest potential. So as chairman of the board's housing committee, I am quite proud of the commitment we have made to develop at least 5,000 new units affordable to households making under 60% of the area median income by 2034. That was a big step, we thought. And we thought that that commitment was a reach. But as has been reported, we are well on our way toward meeting the goal. And as Chairman McKay announced this morning, based on the progress we have made, it is time for the board to consider increasing that goal to 10,000 units. In other words, doubling the goal. In large measure, due to the advocacy and educational efforts of many of the people who attended this symposium, affordable housing has become and will remain one of the top priorities of this Board of Supervisors. In partnership with the FCRHA, we've invested in new projects throughout the county, but we also know that local government cannot do it alone. We need you. We need our nonprofit and for-profit partners to leverage their creativity in the housing projects that are delivered. And we need the community's support to welcome new neighbors into their communities. These new neighbors will be critical to developing our county and creating an even more diverse and successful Fairfax County. So in closing, I guess I would like to close by expressing my gratitude and that of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors to the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority and to the George Mason University School of Business for another outstanding event. And to our sponsors, Virginia Housing and the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors, your continued support and partnership are invaluable and have enabled us to extend the importance of this event to our neighbors and colleagues as we learn from each other, highlight successes, and do our part to advance affordable housing discussion on a much wider scale. This event wouldn't be possible without your support. I also want to thank all the presenters and the county staff, especially the county staff, who worked so hard behind the scenes to make this event the success that it has been. We hope everyone enjoyed today's program, and we very much look forward to seeing you all again in 2003, and hopefully it will be in person. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Faust, for those final remarks. And just by way of closing and to echo what you have said, we would like to express our gratitude for the contributions of so many to this event, from planning and logistics to answering questions and orchestrating our Zoom platform, We'd also like to thank our sponsors, Virginia Housing and the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors, once again, for their continued support in our efforts to elevate this conversation of affordable housing in our community. Finally, we're appreciative of all who took their time to join us today, our panelists, moderators, presenters, and you, our audience. We're very eager to hear your thoughts and feedback from today's event. In just a moment, you will see a link to a brief survey appear in the chat window. We would greatly appreciate it if you would take a few moments to share some thoughts about your experience with us today. This would be very helpful in helping us guide our plans for future events. Additionally, throughout the day, we've received the question, and absolutely, we will be providing video of this event in coming days. And we will be sharing that link with all of our attendees via email once that video has been posted. You can contact us with any questions and comments related to this event by emailing us at rha@fairfaxcounty.gov. So on behalf of all my colleagues from the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority and the George Mason University School of Business, we look forward to continuing this conversation and working with you to increase affordable housing opportunities throughout Fairfax County. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant afternoon.